What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Redonkulous Gaming. Today we're going to talk a little Brewmaster Monk by joining the Venthyr Covenant. Now, the Venthyr Covenant has a signature ability, and the signature ability, of course, is the ability granted to you regardless of what class you're playing on, and that ability is called Door of Shadows. Door of Shadows, if you're not familiar, is the teleport that is on a 1.5 second cast time. You only have one charge, and it's on a 1 minute cooldown. This is a skill that certainly is going to have its value in certain situations, but is not something that, as a Brewmaster Monk, that you're necessarily required to be casting or you're looking for windows to cast, mainly because Monk is already a incredibly mobile class, and with Chi Torpedo or Roll, whatever it is that you want to use, you're ultimately going to be sticking with that if you've used it before. There's going to be very rare situations where it makes sense to use Door of Shadows, but it's still a very fun ability to play around with, and it's something that can be of value depending on the situation. Now, if you have not seen my videos before, you'll know that I am going through each tank, and I am talking about the Covenant ability granted to that class and that specific tank spec. I do this by breaking down really three essential criteria in the way that I grade the abilities. The first of which is, how does the ability feel? Is it something that I look forward to casting? Is it something that I feel like adds value in terms of gameplay? And is it something that is, quite frankly, just fun? Or is it something that you just kind of push and you forget about it and you move on? The next thing that I look at is the overall ability strength. Now, we're a month out from Shadowlands, and what that means is that we're probably in the final draft of what these skills are going to look like, and so we have a pretty good idea of how we can project these skills as we head into the first raid tier for Castle Nathria. The last thing that I look at is the overall viability of the skill. In other words, if I am predominantly a PvE player, which I am, my main question around every single one of these covenants and around every single one of these tank classes, and specifically for this video, Brewmaster, is I want to make sure that regardless of whether or not I'm doing Torghast, dungeons, or raid, I feel as though that covenant ability gives me the viability that I need to be successful in that dungeon. These are signature abilities that Blizzard has developed to help us with class identity, or so they claim, and therefore I would very much like to make sure that I'm picking the right covenant that makes me feel viable in all content that I enjoy playing. So let's go ahead and jump into Fallen Order. Fallen Order is the Venthyr ability for the Monk class. Now, again, I'm going to talk about these abilities from a Brewmaster point of view. I am not going to zoom out and necessarily talk about Windwalker or Mistweaver, so just keep that in mind. This is strictly through the lens of your Brewmaster Monk, and what Fallen Order does is it opens a portal, and this portal is up for 24 total seconds. Every 2 seconds, you're going to get a dead monk that comes back to life and essentially helps you beat down the mobs that you're currently targeting. You can kind of think of this as a mini Earth, Wind, Fire type of cooldown. It is a 3-minute cooldown, so it does feel more like something that you'd want to save for an incredibly difficult trash pack or even a boss. But what it does is it summons monks of every flavor and style, right? So you'll get Fallen Ox, so that's your Brewmasters. You'll get your Cranes, which are your Mistweavers, and you'll get your Tiger Adepts, which are your Windwalker monks, and they'll be up for 6 seconds. The spec in which you identify with the most, so in this case, Brewmaster Monk, those Fallen Ox Adepts are actually going to have more uptime than any of the other potentially spec'd dead monks that come back to help you out. So, in other words, they will assist for an additional 2 seconds than everything else. You'll also summon more of them than you would, the Mistweavers or the Windwalkers, because you're spec'd into Brewmaster. This is somewhat confusing, but in theory, not really. It does make sense that you would have all these different monks come back and help you. They each have different abilities. So when you look at what the Ox, Crane, and Tiger Adepts do, they essentially will either attack with Breath of Fire. If they're Ox, they are going to heal with Enveloping Mist. If they're the Mistweaver kind, or they're going to assault with Fists of Fury if they're the Windwalker kind. So you're going to get all three flavors of your spec here, which is kind of nice to be able to have that in addition to the Celestial. So to have those two things that are essentially summonable as larger cooldowns is actually a nice feeling. And overall, when we get into really our three questions, the first question that I'm going to jump into, because this is where I'm going with this talk track, is that it's actually a really fun ability. It feels really good to press that button and get Fallen Order and to have all your little dead monk buddies of the past come and help you out for whatever it is that you're doing. But it's certainly not something that you're going to find is going to be, you know, a part of your rotation. We're talking a 3-minute cooldown here. This is something that you're really going to have to plan when you use it and why you're using it, and make sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck. If something is, you know, if you're on the trash pack and everything is, you know, 20% health, odds are you're probably not going to want to push it, because what's the point? You're not going to be able to even have 100% uptime of that ability. Odds are by the time that portal goes away and you stop summoning your dead monk buddies, the mobs are going to be dead. So you're going to want to save this for something like a boss or a large trash pack that has been giving you guys issues in terms of getting through a dungeon. It's probably going to see a little bit more viability in something like a Torghast, where you may be soloing and trying to do that at a higher level. But again, timing is everything when you're talking about a longer 3-minute cooldown. But overall, it's fun. It's class identity. It's a lot of what Blizzard was trying to accomplish with these abilities, and it's pretty neat to kind of see all those different types of monks attacking the target for you. As far as the overall strength of the ability, when I look at when I look at it from a Brewmaster point of view, I generally look for my ability to grant me something that I currently don't have within my current toolkit, and that's where I start to struggle a little bit. Is I do get, you know, my Mistweaver buddies helping me out and healing me a little bit, so I get some free healing when that happens. I get some extra throughput with the dead Windwalkers that join the fray too. But when I look at what the Ox Adepts do, the fact that all they're doing is casting Breath of Fire and then kind of peacing out and disappearing, I kind of start to scratch my head a little bit there, because it's super easy to keep Breath of Fire up on really a boss, a trash pack. I mean, you name it. Whatever you're doing, you can keep Breath of Fire up pretty much passively without doing much. And I understand that the main value is going to come from, you know, having the additional healing cast on you, or having, you know, the additional throughput in terms of the overall damage. But then my opinion would be that the Ox Adepts, or whatever your current spec is, but the Ox Adepts actually should not be up longer than the other two types that are joining the battle with you. And the reason for that is I'm already a tank. I'm already casting Breath of Fire. I don't necessarily feel the need to get, you know, a little bit of help on that spell. I'm taking care of it already. I almost wish that it was reversed, and whatever spec you were not actually had the higher uptime. So I would rather have, you know, the dead Windwalkers helping me out, or the spirited Windwalkers help me out. I would rather have the Mistweavers up a little bit longer to heal me a little bit longer. Especially for a class like Brewmaster that relies a little bit more on their healer than maybe some of the other tank classes. Even with all the changes to Monk, that's still the case. You're still very reliant on your healer in most situations. So I almost wish that Fallen Order gave you the option of picking, you know, maybe which spec of your Fallen allies that you would like to have more uptime on. I think that would actually really, you know, it would give the skill a little bit more color, and it would give you a little bit more identity and customization with that. So it's tough to comment on the overall strength right now, because it's not giving me anything that I don't already have, other than, you know, an extra heal or two over the course of 24 seconds. So the strength of that is relatively low, especially because my personal healing got a boost from BFA to Shadowlands. So it's something that I don't even notice, in all honesty. I don't notice that extra healing right now. I don't notice the extra throughput as much. And that mainly comes down to the fact that it's also on a 3-minute cooldown. I think you can make the ability stronger by either reducing that to a 2-minute cooldown or making it something that's a little less less considered a raid cooldown and more of just something that you can be a little bit more liberal with. I think that would make it a little bit more fun too. It's already pretty fun, but I think that would only help. Now, as far as viability, I kind of started to tease this a little bit. It's certainly a viable ability as it stands today. I don't think it's going to scale very well at all, given the fact that the uptime for your adepts are going to be higher than your Mistweaver and higher than your Windwalker. So you're not essentially going to have the extra uptime in terms of the Fist of Fury that your Tiger Adepts are going to be casting. You're not going to be getting the extra heal that you're going to get from your Crane Adepts. So I think if you were getting the extra things that your current spec did not have, it would actually be more viable and more content. You would actually have more throughput on your self-healing. You would have more damage done. And again, I don't really need an assist on keeping Breath of Fire up, so I feel as though the Adepts are actually a little bit of a waste, and it's kind of a bummer that they're the ones that are going to be up the longest. But overall, that's kind of the way I feel about Fallen Order after doing quite a bit of testing. I will say, just kind of as an asterisk here, I did not test this ability with conduits at all. There's a key reason for that, and that reason is a month out, we're starting to see Blizz heavily tweak and play with the conduit system in terms of tuning for these abilities. And while it may change the overall strength of the ability, it's not going to change the way in which you're going to be using the ability. So I wanted to evaluate this ability just kind of as a baseline ability and nothing more. So anyway, let me know your thoughts. If you've done some testing, tell me how it felt. Was it a fun ability for you? Do you agree in terms of having maybe the different adepts up for longer than the current spec that you're in? Let me know.